Yo, Spencer Sakurai here, cinematographer and director, and today I'm talking about a little piece of kit that this company sent me, and I think it's something that's going to be pretty useful and come in handy with my Komodo kit. This is a PL mount from Mofage, don't exactly know how to say their name. It's called the Poco PL adapter, but what's cool about this PL mount is that it actually has drop-in filters on it, which is very unique to the space. A lot of companies are trying to do similar things right now with the Sony mounts and EF mounts. I've talked about my Mica EF drop-in filter adapter before. You know, it goes from the RF on the Komodo or RF on anything else to EF, and then it has a little filter that you can drop in there. And it's a variable ND filter, which is really handy because we all know when swapping lenses, it's really annoying to take the filters on and off the front. Even if you have a matte box system, you have to take the matte box off before you can swing a lens. So it's really kind of handy when you can put a ND filter or some sort of filter in the back of your mount and it's just always there. You pull the lens off and you don't have to change anything out. But we need to test this one out. This one is actually a Kickstarter campaign. It was just launched a couple weeks ago. I believe if you want to get this PL mount with it comes stock with the ND filter, variable ND filter. I believe it's like $330 right now, and it will go up in price when they actually launch. And this is a pre-production model. I just want to keep that in mind. Anything that I do have qualms with, I can actually directly contact them and tell them, you know, what's going on with this, and they can fix some of these things. But there really isn't much to complain about, but we will get into that in today's video. So right out of the gate, comes out of the box, it's made out of a really nice metal material. I actually don't mind the purple color. Maybe some people don't like it. A lot of people prefer black on their cameras because we don't want colors and we don't want reflections to show up on set. So I'm always a big proponent of that. But this purple isn't so bad, honestly. I kind of dig it, to be honest. And so the one that I'm using here is actually a Canon RF to PL, PL being positive lock, which means this positively locks onto your PL mount lens. And PL is like really the industry standard because it won't come off. You're not gonna have any wiggle issues with your lens when you put it in here. It's the most solid mount you can get, and that's why you'll always see a PL mount on your higher end cameras. What's cool about this one is it's designed for all like basically mirrorless cameras, so it comes in, you know, Nikon Z mount, L mount, RF mount, and Sony E mount. I actually had them send me the RF mount and the E mount. I was actually able to use the E mount on my short film Flea, and we were able to put the really expensive Zeiss Supreme lenses on an FX3 on a gimbal and have internal ND behind it, which was really handy, and it actually worked great. What's great about this is you can just swap these out on your own. I think these are gonna be like an extra 20 bucks or something like that if you wanna buy a different mount, have multiple mounts. So, you know, you normally get stuck. You're like, I gotta get this PL mount for this one camera, and then if I need another PL mount for my second camera or whatever. But with these, you can just swap these out whenever you need to. It's just like 6 screws. They provide the tool, they provide this star tool here to do it yourself, no big deal. So I was able to put it on my Komodo and put it on a Sony camera with no issues. So as a PL mount, it works well. It's just kind of what you would expect. You click it on like you would any other mount, and it's really solid. I did notice a little bit of play on my RF mount, but after doing some testing and actually talking to Mofage, it sounds like it's just kind of the RF mounts are always loose. It has nothing to do with their adapter. I actually put my EF mount on my Komodo, and it actually still had a little bit of play, and I never really had noticed it before, but there was a little bit there. And the heavier the lens you put on it, the more you're gonna notice this. Still some wiggle on this mount. Not stoked on that. Should definitely use the mount here to lock it in and make it more secure. So I wouldn't really be concerned about their mounts at this point. From what I can tell, this works totally fine. It does come with a little lens support, which I have taken off because it tends to not act well with the base plate that I have on my Komodo. I think that they are gonna have different options for this in the future. Depending on your setup, you might want a different foot, a different support on the bottom of the mount to be able to make it work with different cages. If you are using this with like a mirrorless camera and you're using one of those cages that kind of protrudes out the front a little bit, the variable ND gear might get in the way of that. So it's something to note that when you're working with these really short flange distance mirrorless cameras, sometimes these things are gonna get too close to your camera and you're gonna have to deal with that. Like for instance, with mine, I don't really have that issue because my Komodo is wide enough and I don't have anything in the front of it. But if I wanted just to take this whole mount off with the ND filter inside of it, this is just the clear, which we'll talk about in a second, I wouldn't be able to take this off. I would have to remove the filter first before I could take it off because it's just too close to the button that would disengage the RF mount. Not usually an issue. I think if you have PL lenses and you're using your camera like this, I bet this is just gonna live on your camera at all times and you're never gonna remove it. Probably won't be an issue, but it's something just to consider with any aftermarket mount like that anyways. It's not always going in, like it doesn't like just like slide in super easy every time. So while I'm kind of talking about that, it does also come with a clear filter. This one says it's like, you know, pure clear filter. And the reason you need this is that your back focus will change if you have nothing here inside of the mount. What that means basically is that your focus markings, where you set your focus on your lens when you have a filter in there, there's gonna be an optical change because you don't have a piece of glass in there, and so your focus will change. So it's best just to operate with a clear in there at all times. That way that your focus markings on your lens mostly match like they should. Also, it's just good for protection. Otherwise, you know, you'd have this big hole on the side of it and dust and stuff can get in there and touch your sensor, and no one wants that anyways. You might get some light leaks. We don't want that. So it's just good to always have the clear filter in if you're not using the PL part of the adapter. But the variable ND, which I can show here now, is pretty nice. It actually goes from 1 stop all the way to 8 stops, which is a really nice range. You're not gonna have any X pattern issues really. If you push it all the way to 8, you get a little bit on the sides, but nothing I would stress at all. I mean, any variable ND is going to give you some issues when you push it really far to the other end. So 1 to 8 is really great. What's great about just a 1 stop at the beginning is that you can basically leave this in all the time. Like if you've got big lights and or if you're just shooting outside, the 1 stop is never gonna be an issue. You could probably leave this in if you wanted to. Sometimes if you need that 1 extra stop of light indoors, not a big deal. Just slide this out and slide in your clear filter and you will be good to go. So what's also fun about this is it has like little gears on it. It has this little gearing system. So if you wanted to put a follow focus on here and you wanted to like mid-shot start adjusting your exposure, maybe someone's inside of a room and they're going outside and you want to pull that ND, you can actually do that with this. I believe they recommend calibrating it manually because this gear may not be totally built to be yanking on it with a really high torqued follow focus motor. So you probably want to use a smaller follow focus motor anyways, and definitely you want to dial back that torque on it. I have not thoroughly tested this myself. It's a little loosey-goosey, but for the most part, you're probably just gonna have your thumb on it, and for that, it's actually really nice. Compared to some other geared variable ND filters that I've used, sometimes those are really tight, and you kind of need a gear to move them. Using your finger is kind of hard, but with this one, using your finger, it's very smooth and controlled and pretty nice. It also has little markings on it. I'm not guessing they're super accurate, but at least you could be like, I wanna hit 1, 2, and you can get really close to being at, you know, whatever 1, 2 is, that's like 4 or 5 stops of ND. You actually have markings there to reset those if you ever need to. So the major question I had when looking at this, I'm like, okay, cool, it's a PL mount for my Komodo. Definitely need a PL mount for my Komodo. But why everyone would be intrigued with this mount is because it has the drop-in filters. You know, when you buy the kit, it comes with a variable ND filter, so you're not trying to buy some you know, third-party ND filter and putting in there. You have to use this one. Well, that's its kind of own discussion. How good is this variable ND filter? When I put on Instagram that I was using this this PL mount, that's what the question was the most. What's the range on the PL mount and how good is it? What's the quality like? And so I took it out, did some tests with it. I tested against my Nisi variable ND filter because that's the one I've been using 100% of the time now. It's the one that has the least color shift out of all the ND filters I've used in the past. So I thought that would be the best comparison for this. And luckily, the variable ND filter held up really well. Actually, I would say that it looks maybe better in some cases than the Nisi, depending on what kind of color shift that you would prefer to have. Every variable ND filter on the market, even the Nisi, is gonna have some sort of effect on your image. If you're gonna put a piece of glass in front of your sensor, if you are going to polarize the light, if you're going to cut light, whatever you're going to do to get rid of some of that light so you can open up your aperture, there's going to be an effect on the image. It doesn't matter what filter you're using. It's a matter of what kind of effect that has and do you like it? Does it suit your shooting? Does it cause issues? So like on my Komodo, often a variable ND filter or any ND filter will cause infrared pollution on my Komodo. My Komodo does not have a very good built-in infrared pollution filter already on the sensor like a lot of cameras do. And so I basically always have an infrared cut filter living on my camera at all times, because I find that it makes the red sensor look way better than people actually think it does look, because a lot of people are always dealing with that pollution and they're not aware of it. I've talked about this before on the channel, but it's a really good time to talk about it again. And this has nothing to do with this company's filter or anyone else's company filter. It's a matter of the Komodo or other cameras having their own infrared pollution problems, and each filter introduces more or less of that infrared pollution. So this one did introduce infrared pollution, as to be expected. But what I did like about this one is that the color shift wasn't very bad overall. And when I did put on my infrared cut, it had introduced maybe like a little bit more green than the Nisi. So the Nisi tends to hold a little bit more of the red tones, and then this one introduced a little bit of green to it. Now, it was very mild, definitely nothing to stress out about, and I actually prefer to have a little bit of green than not. I mean, reds are good too, depending on what you want from a skin tone, but I don't want it to be super, super magenta or super, I don't want to have infrared pollution, obviously, so I don't want reds and the blacks. Once again, that's just a preference thing. Do you like the green or not? But 1 to 8 stops looked nice across the board. When you actually roll the wheel, you don't get a ton of weird reflection issues. Like a lot of these will start filtering certain wavelengths of light, and so your reflections are changing, colors are changing in the scene. This one was pretty good, very comparable to my Nisi, and I definitely would not hesitate using this ND filter based on my testing. And that's the biggest plus of this right now. So often, if you were buying like a wooden camera, PL to RF or EF, it's probably like $500. So this one right now is only $330, and you get a variable ND filter with it. So it's a really good price. This will go up into the $400 to $500 range once it does launch, but you're still getting that ND filter with it, which other companies do make PL mounts, and they are much cheaper, but they don't have this option. Because what you can also do, because we have this drop-in slot and we have this system, they also sent me a mist filter that can go behind the lens, so you don't have to change that out if you want to. The only caveat to this is that you have to use their mist filter, which worked great. It did what you expect. It bloomed the highlights a little bit. Actually, I would say that it retained the black levels better than any of my other mist filters, which I was really surprised by. And that must have something to do with the fact that it's behind the lens, not in the front of the lens. But it bloomed the highlights just like you would want from a mist filter. So the mist filter is cool, so you'll be able to get other things. I'm sure that they may even update their ND system at some point, or they can make changes and you can just simply swap out the filters and put in a new filter, which is really nice. What's also nice is that these are like made out of metal. So like my mica stuff is a little bit more cheaply made because it's a more inexpensive adapter, and it's made just for EF lenses, whereas it's made for more of a higher end lens. It really has a really satisfying click to it. I like that. So before we go, I want to thank today's sponsor, which is Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to present your work online. If you're anything like me, you need a website to show off your work, but Squarespace makes it super easy to do a lot more than just have a portfolio. I mean, recently I was trying to sell a bunch of my camera gear, stuff that I don't use very often, because I'm trying to fund my next short film, and any extra cash would go a long way right now. So I was able to just set up a garage sale on there, basically set up an entire professionally made product page, and it took me no time at all. I just grabbed some photos of the products, I threw them in there, I added shipping to it, and everything's just already built into the platform to create a store. So it made it super easy, and I've already sold almost all of the gear I've put on there. And I'm even able to send tracking numbers to the people that have purchased the products. And I was able to bypass things like eBay and Facebook Marketplace and stuff like that. And I just did it all myself through my website. So if you're looking to build a website right now, you can do that with Squarespace. Click the link in the description to get 10% off. And I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. So yeah, if you're looking for a PL2 mirrorless camera adapter right now, I wouldn't see a reason not to invest in this if you really want to have PL lenses and have a PL mount. The fact that you can use a variable ND filter behind the lens if you need to is really handy. I do still have to put an infrared cut on my camera no matter what, so I'm always going to have an infrared filter on the front of my lenses regardless. So for me, it's totally fine. It's still better than having to put multiple filters on the front of your lens or to have a full matte box and be dealing with that. Matte boxes are nice for other reasons. Obviously you can cut light and use your little eyebrow on top and stuff like that. But if you're just wanting a more run and gun system but still have PL, then this might be something to consider. Once again, this is a pre-production model that I have, and this is a Kickstarter campaign, so they have to fully fund their Kickstarter to get this thing made. And it's a company I've never heard of before. before, so I can't really talk to that and the reputation, but they have been in contact with me and they have seemed to listen to me and what I've said about the mount, and they seem to care a lot based on what I can tell and my interactions with them. And so that's something that I think is important as a company. So that's really nice. Well, I think that about does it. If you have any questions about the mount, please leave them in the comments below. And until next time, guys, I'm Suja Sakurai. See ya.